Hello, my dear friend. Hope you are doing great. Today we dive into the feeling of being lost. Not just the word, but every layer, every quiet detail hidden beneath it. Now grab your coffee and let's dive in. Feeling lost in life, often described as a state of existential aimlessness, is a profound psychological experience. It usually begins when the internal compass that guides your decisions, values, and sense of purpose stops aligning with your daily reality. When does the feeling of being lost start? There is rarely a single moment. Rather, it is a gradual erosion of certainty. It typically starts when you realize you are living a life designed by others, parents, society, or social media, rather than yourself. You look at your achievements and feel nothing because they aren't yours. You may still be doing the work and showing up, but the purpose behind it has vanished. This is known as loss of agency, feeling like a passenger in your own life rather than the driver. It starts when every path looks equally meaningless. When you don't know who you are, you don't know what to choose, leading to a stuck feeling. Often being lost doesn't feel like sadness. It feels like apathy. You stop caring about the outcomes of your actions. Several specific life events can trigger the sensation of being lost: quarter-life or midlife crises. These happen during transitions, graduating college, turning 30 or 40, when you realize that the roadmap you were given has ended, and there are no more instructions. Major life transitions, the end of a long-term relationship, a career change, or moving to a new country can strip away your identity, leaving you wondering, who am I without this person/job/place? Burnout. When you push yourself too hard for too long toward a goal that doesn't satisfy your soul, your mind eventually shuts off the motivation centers to protect itself. Does the feeling of being lost in life truly signify a failure? No. Being lost is absolutely not a sign of failure. In fact, in the fields of psychology and philosophy, feeling lost is often viewed as a necessary precursor to growth. To think of it as failure is a cognitive distortion, a trick the mind plays to make you feel guilty for a natural process of evolution. Society often teaches us that life should be a linear path: school, career, marriage, success. However, human development is cyclical, not linear. Expansion versus contraction. Just like the seasons, the human experience has periods of harvest, clarity, success, and winter, confusion, rest. We often feel like failures because we compare our internal mess to everyone else's external highlight reel. Being lost simply means you are in a transition phase that everyone experiences, even if they don't show it. Feeling lost requires a high level of self-awareness. A person who is truly failing in the spiritual sense is someone who is living a lie and is too numb to notice. The feeling of being lost is actually your soul's alarm system. It is telling you that your current environment, habits, or goals are no longer sufficient for who you are becoming. You aren't lost because you lack direction. You are lost because the old map you are using, perhaps one given to you by your parents or society, no longer fits the new territory of your life. In biology, before a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it enters a cocoon and literally turns into mush. It has no shape, no direction, and no identity. This is called a liminal space. If the caterpillar thought like a human, it would think it was failing because it can no longer crawl. In reality, it is preparing to fly. When you feel lost, your brain is often pruning old neural pathways, shedding old beliefs and ways of thinking, to make room for new, more complex ones. We often blame big life changes for feeling lost. The sensation of being aimless usually stems from subtle underlying psychological shifts. Here are the hidden causes, the invisible triggers, that make you feel lost. One of the most common hidden causes is when you are winning at a game you don't actually care about. You might be successful in your career or studies, but if those achievements don't align with your core values, for example, you value creativity but work in a rigid bureaucracy, your brain sends a signal of emptiness. You feel lost because your external life is a stranger to your internal self. You are moving fast, but in the wrong direction. In the modern world, we suffer from the paradox of choice. Previous generations often had limited paths. Today, the internet shows us 1,000 different ways to live. When you have infinite options, the fear of making the wrong choice leads to analysis paralysis. You feel lost because you're standing at a crossroads with 1,000 paths, and the pressure to choose the perfect one keeps you frozen. Sometimes we feel lost because we have spent years on autopilot to survive stress or expectations. You have been so focused on doing and finishing tasks, meeting deadlines, pleasing others, that you stopped being. Eventually, the observer part of your brain wakes up and realizes it doesn't recognize the life you've built. This creates a sudden haunting feeling of being a stranger in your own skin. The arrival fallacy. This is the psychological trap of believing that, once I reach goal X, I will finally be happy. You spend years working toward a degree, a job, or a relationship. When you finally arrive, the happiness only lasts for a day, followed by a massive emotional crash. You feel lost because the North Star you were following disappeared, and you realize that the destination didn't fix your internal unrest. Feeling lost is often a delayed reaction to suppressed emotions. If you went through a period of high stress or loss and pushed through it without grieving or processing, that energy eventually turns into a fog. Your mind creates a sense of numbness or lostness as a defense mechanism to keep you from feeling the old pain. You aren't lost. You are emotionally exhausted. Humans are biological creatures that require cycles of effort and rest. Modern life is often a flat line of constant stimulation, scrolling, working, consuming. Without rituals, moments of reflection, silence, or connection to nature, the brain loses its sense of time and place. You feel like you are floating in a void because there are no anchors in your day to tell your soul where it is. Why do we find ourselves compulsively curating our lives to earn the applause of others, only to realize we have become strangers to our own needs and silence the very voice that makes us who we are? This tendency is known as the people-pleasing trap. While it often looks like kindness, it is usually rooted in deep-seated survival mechanisms and social conditioning. In psychology, beyond fight, flight, or freeze, there is a fourth trauma response called fawn. This is a survival strategy where a person attempts to avoid conflict or harm by becoming as helpful and agreeable as possible. By mirroring the expectations of others, you create a safety zone. If everyone is happy with you, you feel safe from rejection, criticism, or abandonment. You forget yourself because your brain views self-assertion as a threat to your safety. When we lack a solid internal compass, we outsource our value to the opinions of others. We only feel good or successful if we see a reflection of approval in someone else's eyes. Because everyone has different expectations, you become a chameleon, constantly changing colors to fit in. Eventually, you lose track of your original color, your true identity, because you are too busy maintaining the versions of yourself that others like. Many of us were raised with a cultural or familial script that equates self-sacrifice with moral goodness. We are taught that saying no is selfish and that being a good person means being available to everyone at all times. This creates a toxic cycle where choosing yourself feels like a sin or a failure of character. We ignore our own exhaustion because we are chasing the noble title of being the one who always helps. For many, the internal noise of someone being disappointed in them is louder than the pain of their own burnout. Some people cannot handle the temporary tension of a no. To avoid the 10 seconds of awkwardness or the possibility of someone being mad, they trade away hours of their time and energy. You choose the long-term pain of self-neglect over the short-term discomfort of setting a boundary. Sometimes pleasing others is a subtle way to feel in control of our environment. If you are the one everyone relies on, you become indispensable. This provides a sense of power or being needed. We forget ourselves because we have become addicted to the ego boost that comes from being the savior, the fixer, or the reliable one. When you please everyone else, you create a shadow self, a version of you that is full of resentment, anger, and fatigue. This leads to passive aggression. Because your needs aren't being met, you eventually start feeling bitter toward the people you are trying to please. You become like a house where everyone has a key, and they keep taking the furniture until there is nothing left for you to sit on. Many of us carry a subconscious fear that if we allow ourselves to truly feel our sadness, anger, or disappointment, we will fall into a hole and never come out. It feels like opening a dam. We think, if I start crying now, I'll never stop. Or, if I admit how angry I am, I will lose control. Asterisk. We stay lost in a fog of numbness because it feels safer than the fire of intense emotion, even though the fog is what's actually killing our spirit. As we discussed with people-pleasing, we invest a lot of energy into a specific version of ourselves. If your identity is the strong one, the happy one, or the successful one, then feeling vulnerable or broken feels like a betrayal of that brand. Facing your true feelings means admitting that the mask is fake. It's painful to realize that the person the world loves isn't actually the person sitting in the dark at 3 a.m. We aren't taught how to feel. Society teaches us how to solve problems, how to build resumes, and how to stay busy. When a complex, heavy emotion hits us, we don't have the vocabulary for it. Instead of processing it, we label it as stress and try to work it away. We feel lost because we are experiencing a language barrier with our own hearts. Perhaps the most painful reason we avoid our feelings is that they remind us of how long we've ignored ourselves. Facing your feelings means facing the fact that you've said yes when you meant no for years. It means realizing how much time you've lost being someone you aren't. We stay lost because it's a way to avoid the grief of realizing we've been our own worst enemy. If you're tired of running, you don't have to face everything at once. You can start with micro face-offs. Sit for just 2 minutes and ask, if I didn't have to be fine for anyone else right now, what would my body tell me? Write down the ugly truths you're afraid of. You don't have to show anyone. The act of putting it on paper moves the emotion from inside you to in front of you. Remember that your feelings are not your enemies. They are messengers. They are trying to tell you where your life is out of alignment so you can finally find your way home. Does the modern world's obsession with constant noise and perpetual distraction serve as a strategic fortress, built specifically to prevent us from hearing the uncomfortable whispers of a soul that has been lost for far too long? To truly understand yourself, you eventually have to stop running. We use noise, music, podcasts, social media, work, as a form of auditory camouflage. If the room is loud enough, we don't have to hear the truth. But silence is the only environment where the lumen, your inner light, can actually become visible. When you remove external noise, the internal noise becomes deafening at first. This is where most people quit. In silence, your anxieties, suppressed regrets, and lost feelings bubble to the surface. It feels overwhelming because you are finally seeing the clutter of your mind without the distraction of a screen. If you stay in the silence long enough, the dust settles. You begin to distinguish between the critic, the voice that tells you you're a failure, and the self, the voice that knows what you actually need. We often feel lost because we are constantly reacting to the world. A notification pings and we check it. Someone asks for a favor and we say yes. Silence creates a gap between a stimulus and your response. In that gap, you regain your power. Silence allows you to ask, do I actually want to do this, or am I just performing for others again? It is the birthplace of boundaries. Intuition is a quiet voice. It doesn't shout. When your life is loud, your intuition is drowned out by the shoulds of society. Silence allows you to feel where you are holding tension. Is your chest tight? Is your stomach in knots? Your body often knows you are lost before your mind admits it. In the quiet, your gut feeling becomes louder. You start to sense which path feels heavy and which path feels light. This is how you begin to redraw your own map. Many people confuse the two. Loneliness is a lack of others, but silence is a presence of self. To stop being a people pleaser, you have to be okay with your own company. Silence is the training ground for this. If you can sit in a room alone for 20 minutes and not feel the need to escape into a phone, you're no longer a slave to external approval. You begin to notice your own patterns without judgment. You become a researcher of your own life. Silence is where you integrate the shadow self we discussed earlier. It is where you admit the things you've been avoiding and forgive yourself for the time you've lost. You realize that the void you were afraid of isn't empty. It's actually full of the parts of yourself you abandoned to keep others happy. Okay, how to practice active silence. You don't need a mountain retreat. You just need to stop the input. Try 15 minutes a day with no phone, no book, and no music. Just sit. Notice the urge to reach for a distraction. That urge is the feeling of you trying to run away from yourself. Walk without headphones. Observe the world. But more importantly, observe the thoughts that arise when you have nothing to listen to but your own breath. Ask yourself one question in the silence. What am I currently pretending not to know? Then wait. Don't force the answer. If we are all destined to lose our way at some point, how do we discern whether we are merely pausing in a temporary fog to catch our breath, or if we have truly wandered off the edge of our own lives into a wilderness that no longer recognizes us? It is a terrifying thing to feel adrift, but not all lostness is created equal. As we've journeyed through the ideas of silence and the fear of our true feelings, we eventually hit a crossroads where we must ask, is this just a bad week, or is my entire soul calling for a revolution? This is usually reactive. It's tied to a specific event, a breakup, a stressful project, or a physical burnout. You feel lost because the scenery of your life changed too fast, and your mind is still catching up. You still know who you are. You just don't know where you are. This is existential. Everything on the outside might look perfect. You have the job, the friends, the routine, but on the inside, there's a profound mismatch. You feel lost, not because of what is happening to you, but because of who you have become. You don't recognize the person in the mirror. You feel tired. A weekend of deep sleep, a trip away, or a long talk with a friend usually refills your battery. It is a depletion of energy. You feel numb. No amount of sleep or vacation fixes it. You could be on a beach in paradise and still feel like you are trapped in a gray box. This is a depletion of meaning, not just energy. You find yourself looking back at the good old days, or looking forward to when this project is over. Your identity is still anchored in a timeline. Time feels flat. You feel like you are stuck in a loop where the future looks exactly like the present, and the present feels like a waiting room for a life that never starts. You've lost your rhythm entirely. When you sit in the silence we discussed, you feel a sense of, I just need a plan. You are looking for a map. When you sit in silence, you feel a sense of, I need a new me. You aren't looking for a map. You are looking for a new destination entirely. The very things that used to make you happy now feel like heavy chains. Functional versus dysfunctional being. You are still in your life. You are struggling, but you are still connected to your values. You are just overwhelmed. You feel like a ghost in your own life. You are people-pleasing, as we touched on. Not because you want to be nice, but because you've forgotten how to be anything else. You are performing a role in a play you never signed up for. To tell the difference, ask yourself this one question. If I could press a button and return to exactly how my life was 1 year ago, would I feel relieved, or would I feel trapped? If you feel relieved, your lostness is likely temporary. You just want your balance back. If you feel trapped, your lostness is real. You haven't lost your way. You've outgrown your life. We often panic when we feel lost, treating a temporary fog like a total collapse, which causes unnecessary depression. Conversely, we try to fix real lostness with temporary fixes, like a new car or a short trip, which only makes the void feel deeper when the novelty wears off. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and felt like you were actually home, or has your reflection become just another stranger you've spent your whole life trying to manage and keep quiet? The journey into the self eventually reaches a point where the fog becomes so thick that your soul starts sending out emergency flares. These aren't just feelings of being lost. They are specific, physical, and psychological signals that your true self has been abandoned in the basement of your own life, while you were busy maintaining the exterior. Here are the signs that it is time to stop looking outward and finally return to yourself. You start feeling like a spectator in your own body. You go through the motions, conversations, meetings, family dinners, but you aren't actually there. It's as if you are watching a movie of someone else living your life. This dissociation is a clear sign that the real you has checked out because the environment you've built has become too inhospitable for your truth to survive. We talked about people-pleasing, but a major sign of needing to return to yourself is when everyone's presence feels like a debt. You feel a deep, heavy exhaustion at the thought of being perceived by anyone. This happens because you are using 90% of your energy to perform a version of yourself that fits their expectations, leaving zero energy for your actual essence. You don't hate people. You hate the you have to be when you're around them. When was the last time you liked something? A podcast, a book, a piece of clothing, simply because you liked it, without wondering how it would look to others. A major sign of abandonment is when you realize you no longer know your own preferences. You've consulted the world's map for so long that your own internal compass of joy versus dislike has gathered dust. If your answer to what do you want to do is always, I don't care, you've lost your seat at the table of your own life. The body is a more honest narrator than the mind. When you are disconnected from yourself, you often carry a literal heaviness. Your shoulders are permanently raised, your jaw is clenched, or you feel a constant lump in your throat that you can't swallow. This is the physical energy of all the words you haven't said and all the feelings you've avoided. Your body is trying to hold together a person that your soul is trying to let go of. A subtle hidden sign is when you find yourself feeling annoyed or judgmental toward people who are living boldly, loudly, or authentically. This is a mirror reflection of your own repressed desires. Your irritation is actually envy in disguise. Seeing someone else be themselves hurts because it highlights the lumen you've dimmed within yourself to keep the peace. You start feeling a strange, nostalgic grief for the person you were before you became what you had to be. You might find yourself looking at old photos or remembering hobbies you loved 10 years ago with a sense of deep mourning. That isn't just nostalgia. It is your soul reminding you of the last time you were actually connected to your source. Returning to yourself isn't about becoming a new person. It's about unbecoming everything that isn't you. It's the process of admitting which parts of your life are theaters and which are homes. Bringing back the no you suppressed and the yes you hid. Using that silence, we discussed sitting with the missing child inside you and promising them that you won't leave them again just to make someone else comfortable. Returning to yourself is not a grand, sudden event. It is a slow, rhythmic process of reclamation. You don't find yourself. You build a safe enough environment for your true self to finally come out of hiding. Your true self hid because it felt unsafe, perhaps judged, rejected, or overwhelmed. You cannot return to yourself if your daily life is still a war zone of people-pleasing and noise. Identify one area of your life where you are performing the most. Is it a specific friendship, a social media habit, a work persona? Create a sanctuary space. This could be a physical corner of your room or a 30-minute window in your day where no one is allowed to want anything from you. In this space, the mask is allowed to drop. When you are lost, big questions like, "What is my life purpose?" are paralyzing. You must start with the smallest possible unit of truth, your physical yes and no. Throughout the day, ask yourself, do I actually want this coffee or is it just a habit? Do I actually want to listen to this song or is it just background noise? You are recalibrating your internal compass. By honoring small preferences, like choosing a different path to walk or a different meal, you prove to your soul that you are finally listening to its voice again. Most of us live horizontally, constantly looking left and right at what others are doing, comparing and reacting. Returning to yourself requires vertical living. When you feel a wave of the lostness we discussed, stop looking at your phone, the horizontal world. Instead, close your eyes and breathe into your feet. Feel the weight of your own body. This is the only place you actually exist. By moving your attention from the world out there to the sensations in here, you are physically returning to your home base. The mind can lie and rationalize, but the body cannot. To return to yourself, you must learn your body's honest signals. Notice the tightness versus the expansion. When you say yes to a social invitation, does your chest tighten? That is a no from the soul. When you think about a certain hobby or person, do you breathe deeper? That is a yes. Start honoring the no in your chest, even if your mind says you should do it. Every time you honor a physical no, a piece of your lost self returns. Earlier, we mentioned the missing child archetype. Returning to yourself involves an actual conversation with the part of you that was left behind. Set aside time in the silence we discussed. Grab a pen and paper. Write with your dominant hand. Where did I leave you? Then switch to your non-dominant hand and let the answer flow without thinking. It might say, "You left me when you started that job," or "You left me when you stopped drawing." Tell that part of you, "I see you now. I'm not going to ignore you anymore." Returning to yourself isn't always peaceful. It's often messy. You have to be willing to admit things that might disappoint others. You might have to admit, "I don't actually like this life I built." Asterisk, the courage. Allowing yourself to be unlikable to others is often the price of admission for being at home with yourself. It is better to be a failure in the eyes of the world while being a success in your own heart. Don't try to change your whole life today. Just pick one micro-truth. Say no to one small thing you don't want to do, or say yes to one small thing that makes your heart feel even 1% lighter. In the end, the journey back to yourself is simply the quiet, courageous choice to stop being a stranger in your own life and to finally become your own home.